here talking about my upcoming show at Patrick Painter. It's untitled. I wanted to leave it untitled so that people wouldn't come in with a preconceived idea about what they might see during the show. So the video came about as a part of a lengthy process. I spent 6 months traveling around the Anza-Borrego Desert, meeting dirt bike riders. The area caught my eye, well, because I grew up in the desert, so it felt incredibly familiar, but also I love the alien quality of the desert, which I loved growing up, sort of at the edge of the world. You always felt like you were going to fall right off. So I started going out there. I was meeting people. I grew up with a lot of dirt bikers in my family. It's a pretty common hobby in the middle of the desert. There's not much to do. So I was photographing young dirt bike riders, and then I started meeting more and more people and, drinking beer in the desert, hanging out all night. And so I started to sort of work with a few of them. So I met this guy named John, who's the gentleman in this video. And I knew the desert so well. I knew the light of the desert. So I knew at what time I wanted to shoot this piece. And so I was talking to him, and I met his whole family, and we were kind of hanging out, and I was like, would you be interested in doing this thing for me? And so we started talking, and then I got him out there. I could hardly get him to stop. And that's kind of how this piece came about. But it was a part of a larger project that involves my interest in masculinity and gender in the desert itself, in terms of language, which comes back to my upbringing. When I think about language in the desert is this sort of ultimate foreign space on the planet. So you get to this place where you're sort of at the limits of language, where it's sort of hard to describe. You're sort of at the edge of civilization. So there's this way in which, language kind of doesn't apply. There's a certain kind of strangeness to it. It's a really sort of weird, strange, queer space. So in terms of language, that's what I love about it, is this place where there's like possibility, because things aren't completely named and things aren't, sort of colonized, or they haven't been inhabited really, So when I was 4, I was introduced, my grandfather's a cowboy, so we were put on horses bareback. Shortly after that, we were put on the backs of dirt bikes and quads, and we're riding around the desert. So that was kind of my introduction to, things that you ride in the desert. But I was also I was a tomboy, so I would run around, I thought, my brother doesn't have to wear a shirt, why do I have to wear a shirt? So I was just this little tomboy, running around, but ostensibly, in a girl's body. So then as I got older, I've always had an interest in things around gender and machismo, and so I found a way to sort of investigate those things or sort of talk about those things a little bit more by returning to the desert. So I found myself being drawn to these teenagers, the younger guys who are riding, so 17, 18, sometimes 14. So this kind of nebulous age between boyhood and manhood, where they're sort of exercising a certain kind of machismo or learning to take it on, but they haven't quite found their edge. And so I found that to be a really interesting group of people to work with. And so I focused a lot of my attention on that while I was in the desert, so with the videos and the portraits as well. I've been thinking about working with riders on their bikes, because I've been taking portraits of people off of their bikes, sort of in their gear, in this sort of pseudo-military armor. But I had this idea. I've always been into choreography, and I love Yvonne Rainer, and so I really wanted to sort of work with someone and kind of choreograph a moment or provide space for something special to happen. So when I met John, and I knew the time was right, given the light and what I could get, and just knowing my camera, being a photographer, understanding light, I knew the hour that I wanted. So I sort of set up the space for him, and then there was room for both of us to sort of collaborate, essentially. So him doing what he was doing and me prompting that and sort of providing a stage. And then also figuring where to frame everything and having an idea about what I could do with this material.